Richard, he bottoms into three, and he's fouled. And throw ahead to Richard. What a beat.
Two men, two decisions, one dynasty on the line. Right now, as you're watching this video, the Golden State Warriors are sitting in a room somewhere in San Francisco staring at two names on a whiteboard. Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford. And the question hanging in the air like smoke is simple, but the answer is anything but. Do they bring them back? Do they let them walk? And if they get this wrong, if they misread this moment, could this be the beginning of the end for the last real chapter of the Stephen Curry era? Because here's what most people aren't talking about. This isn't just a free agency decision. This is a franchise-defining fork in the road. And every single choice the Warriors make this summer will echo for the next 5 years. So buckle up, because we're going deep on this one. Let's start with the landscape. The Warriors just finished a 2025-26 season that felt like a story written by someone who couldn't decide whether they were writing a comeback tale or a tragedy. They were good enough to dream, not good enough to do. They lost in the play-in round to the Phoenix Suns. The confetti didn't fall for them. The crowd didn't rush the court for them. And now, with the offseason stretching out in front of them like an open highway, Golden State faces a choice that will define everything. And at the very center of that choice, standing there like two giant question marks, are a 7'3" Latvian who can barely stay healthy and a nearly 40-year-old veteran who might be thinking about never playing basketball again. This is the Warriors' summer. And it is absolutely wild. Let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand where Golden State is right now, you need to understand how they got here. Stephen Curry. The man is still playing at an absolutely elite level. He's still one of the best players in the NBA. His contract is paying him over $62 million next season. $62 million. And he deserves every penny. But that also means the Warriors are locked into spending like a dynasty team, whether or not they actually have dynasty-level talent around him. And then there's Jimmy Butler. The Warriors made that massive bet last offseason, bringing in Jimmy Buckets, and for a while it looked like genius. But then January hit and it all came crashing down. Butler tore his right ACL against the Heat. Just like that. Gone. And now he's sitting on a $56 million salary for next season as a player who will be 37 years old and coming off one of the most brutal injuries in basketball. So right off the top, before we even get to free agency, before we even discuss Porzingis or Horford, the Warriors are already over the projected $165 million salary cap. Already. Just with Curry and Butler alone, they're looking at over $119 million committed to two players. And one of them might not even play meaningful minutes next year. That is the tightrope the Warriors are walking. Now add Draymond Green into the mix. The heart of the dynasty. The guy who bleeds blue and gold in a way that transcends contracts. He has a player option, but no one really believes Draymond is leaving. That's another projected $28 million. And now we're approaching $150 million for three players before we've even touched the rest of the roster. And somewhere in that math, the Warriors need to figure out what to do with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford. So let's talk about Porzingis first, because his situation is the most complicated and honestly the most fascinating. Imagine this. It's February 5th, 2026. The NBA trade deadline. And the Golden State Warriors, desperate for front-court help, make a move that shocks the league. They trade Jonathan Kuminga, a young, athletic, long-term investment, to the Atlanta Hawks. In return, they get Kristaps Porzingis. Now let's be honest. At that moment, some Warriors fans were thrilled. Porzingis is a unicorn. He's 7'3", but he can shoot threes, he can block shots, he can pass. When he's healthy, there are only a handful of players in the world who can do what he does. He changes the geometry of a basketball game just by standing there. But there was a shadow hanging over that trade from the moment it was announced. Porzingis wasn't healthy. He was already dealing with a respiratory illness, the same one that had been following him like a ghost for the past 2 seasons. And when he showed up in Golden State, the hope was that a change of scenery, a new training staff, a fresh start, maybe that would be enough to unlock him. It wasn't. Not fully. In 15 regular season games as a Warrior, Porzingis averaged 16.1 points, 5.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, and 1.1 blocks. Those numbers, when you look at them on paper, They're good. They're genuinely good. He shot 43.3% from the field, and the team felt different with him on the floor. Steve Kerr noticed it. The players noticed it. The fans noticed it. But 15 games. That's all they got. And now the question that's haunting the Warriors front office is this. Was that a preview of what Porzingis could be? Or was that just a tantalizing sample size that will never be replicated? Because here's the thing about Kristaps Porzingis that never gets mentioned enough. He has played more than 65 games in a season exactly once in the last 9 years. Once. This is a player who has had a torn ACL, who has had bone bruises, who has had a respiratory illness that doesn't seem to want to leave his body. The injury history isn't a footnote. The injury history is the story. And yet, when Warriors GM Mike Dunleavy Jr. stood in front of reporters just days ago and someone asked him about Porzingis, he didn't hesitate. He said, and I'm quoting here, that Porzingis is, quote, a unique player on both ends of the court. He said those are guys they definitely would love to have back. And Steve Kerr? Kerr said he knows Porzingis enjoyed it here, and called him a really talented player. Kerr even gave Porzingis a pass on the standard exit interview, because KP had to fly out the day after the season ended, and Kerr trusted their relationship enough not to force it. That is not the language of an organization that's moving on. That is the language of an organization that is genuinely, deeply invested in making this work. But here's where it gets complicated. And this is the part that I want you to really pay attention to, because this is the chess match inside the chess match. Porzingis is an unrestricted free agent. He can talk to any team. He can sign anywhere. There is nothing stopping another franchise from walking up to him and saying, hey, we'll give you $25 million a year and here's your contract. Now, the Warriors have his bird rights. That means they can exceed the salary cap to re-sign him. They have that tool. But bird rights don't matter if another team offers so much money that Golden State simply can't match it or won't. And here's where the numbers get genuinely painful. According to multiple sources and salary cap analysts, if the Warriors re-sign Green at around $18 million and Porzingis somewhere around $20 to $21 million, they're looking at a payroll sitting near $194 million before they've even filled out the rest of the roster. Think about that. Nearly $200 million. With a projected cap of around $165 million. They'd be deep into luxury tax territory. Deep into the second apron territory. And the second apron is not a friendly place to operate. It comes with restrictions that genuinely hamstring a team's ability to add talent. So the Warriors are sitting there doing this math and realizing that every dollar they spend on Porzingis is a dollar they don't have for anyone else. And the salary cap analysts are suggesting that to realistically re-sign him and still build a functional roster around him, the sweet spot for Porzingis' salary is probably around $20 to $24 million per year. But will Porzingis take that? This is the information gap that nobody can answer right now. Because Porzingis is entering free agency with something to prove. He's nearly 31 years old. He's played a combined 32 games this past season across Atlanta and Golden State. His window for getting a significant long-term contract is not closing, it might already be gone. And he knows it. So on one hand, coming back to Golden State might make sense for him. He raved about the training staff. He specifically praised Rick Celebrini, the Warriors' director of sports medicine and performance. There's reason to believe that the infrastructure Golden State has built for player health and recovery is genuinely elite. If there's a place where Porzingis could actually stay healthy, it might be here. But on the other hand, and this is the tension, if some other team comes along and says, we'll give you 23, 24, 25 million a year for 3 years, Porzingis has to think about that seriously. Maybe even desperately. Because he's never been able to play enough games to build the kind of legacy or bargaining power that justifies a massive payday. This might be his last chance at real money. And there's a whisper in the background of all this that makes everything even more complicated. Warriors insider Tim Kawakami floated a scenario that made the basketball world stop and think. What if the Warriors, rather than re-signing Porzingis, try to trade him? What if they use his bird rights and his expiring deal as part of a sign-and-trade package to go out and get a bigger piece? A superstar piece. Because remember, the Warriors' summer isn't just about Porzingis and Horford. In the background, looming over everything like a thundercloud, is the Giannis Antetokounmpo situation in Milwaukee. And the Kawhi Leonard situation in Los Angeles. The Warriors reportedly offered 4 unprotected first-round picks for Giannis at the trade deadline. That is an enormous ask, and they were willing to pay it. The Bucks didn't bite. But this summer, the Warriors can improve that offer. They can add first-round pick swaps. And some people inside the league believe that if the Warriors included Jimmy Butler's expiring $56 million salary in the deal, essentially giving Milwaukee a financial reset button, that might be enough to get Giannis on a plane to San Francisco. But think about what that means for Porzingis. If the Warriors are keeping financial flexibility open for a Giannis trade, they might not be able to afford Porzingis too. And if they use Porzingis in a sign-and-trade package, aggregating his salary to make the numbers work in a bigger deal, then he's gone regardless of what anybody wants. Kawakami even put a number on it. He said Porzingis is more likely to end up being traded to a team willing to pay him more than $15 million per year than to be re-signed by Golden State at that price range. And here's the brutal reality. Kawakami knows this organization. He's been covering the Warriors for years. When he says something like that, you listen. So where does that leave us? On the one hand, you have the Warriors front office publicly saying they love Porzingis and want him back. On the other hand, you have the Warriors top insider suggesting he's more likely to be traded or let walk than re-signed at a salary that makes sense for him. That contradiction is the story. That tension is the whole offseason. Now let's talk about Al Horford. And honestly, this one feels completely different. If Porzingis is a financial puzzle wrapped in an injury mystery, Horford is something else entirely. He's a human story. A beautiful, complicated, bittersweet human story. Al Horford is going to turn 40 years old on June 3rd. He's been in the NBA for 19 years. 19 years. He started his career with the Atlanta Hawks back in 2007. He's been to Boston. He's been to Philadelphia. He went back to Boston and won something extraordinary there. He's played more NBA games than most humans can even imagine playing. And now here he is, in the final chapter of what has been one of the most consistent, underappreciated careers in NBA history. This past season with the Warriors, Horford averaged 8.3 points, 4.9 rebounds, 2.6 assists, and 1.1 blocks per game. He was limited to 45 games due to injuries. And yet, the Warriors loved having him. Not just for the numbers, but for everything else. Mike Dunleavy said it explicitly. Horford brings size. He brings shooting. He brings leadership. He brings things to this roster that Golden State has not always had. And anyone who watched the Warriors in their dynasty years knows they sometimes struggled against big, physical frontcourts. Horford addresses that. He always has. And then there was that moment in the play-in tournament against the Los Angeles Clippers. Horford had what multiple people described as a memorable performance. At 39 years old. In a must-win game. The Warriors lost to Phoenix in the play-in ultimately, but Horford showed that at this age, in this stage of his career, he still has something real to offer. Now here's where the decision gets human rather than numerical. Horford has a player option for next season worth just under $6 million. $6 million. In the context of this Warriors salary discussion, that is practically nothing. If he picks up that option and comes back, the Warriors get one of the most respected veterans in the league for basically a rounding error on their cap sheet. But Horford might not pick it up. Not because he wants more money, but because he might retire. Steve Kerr sat down with Horford in an exit meeting just days after the season ended. And Kerr came away, his word, hoping Horford comes back. Kerr talked about how Horford's family loves the Bay Area. He talked about how Al genuinely enjoys being a Warrior. He talked about it with warmth and genuine affection. But when Horford spoke to reporters at his own exit interview, the language was measured. Careful. He talked about not wanting to rush. He talked about not letting emotions make the decision. He talked about discussing his plans with his family. That is not the language of someone who has already decided to play. That is the language of a man weighing whether basketball still makes sense for his life. Whether one more year, at 40 years old, with a family, having given everything he has to this game, is worth doing. He mentioned that he's one season away from the 20-year club. 1 year away from joining an elite fraternity of players who have sustained an NBA career for 2 full decades. That's a real incentive. It's legacy. It's history. It's something you can tell your grandchildren. But retirement has been on his mind for multiple years now. This isn't new. Every off-season for the last few years, Horford has had to ask himself the question. And every year, he's come back. The real question is whether this is finally the summer where the answer is different. For the Warriors, the calculus is simple. If Horford picks up his option, they are thrilled. He's a bargain at $6 million. He gives them a veteran anchor in the frontcourt. He gives Porzingis, if Porzingis is back, a partnership that maximizes both of their strengths. And he gives Stephen Curry another trusted teammate who understands winning basketball. But nobody can make that choice for him. The ball, as Dunleavy said, is entirely in Horford's court. Now let's zoom out. Because we've been talking about Porzingis and Horford in relative isolation, but there's a much bigger picture here that changes everything. Imagine the best possible scenario for the Warriors this off-season. Horford picks up his option. Porzingis agrees to come back at a team-friendly deal. Draymond Green stays. And then the Warriors, with their remaining financial tools and their draft picks and their assets, make a run at either Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kawhi Leonard. Pair either of those players with Stephen Curry. Add Porzingis and Draymond. Add a healthy Jimmy Butler coming back mid-season. Suddenly you're looking at a team that isn't just competitive. You're looking at a team that's legitimately scary. A team that could win a championship. That's the dream. That's the scenario that has Warriors fans lying awake at night, not because they're worried, but because they can actually see it. They can almost touch it. But now imagine the nightmare scenario. Horford retires. Porzingis either demands more money than the Warriors can offer, or he gets used in a sign-and-trade that doesn't yield what the front office hopes for. Giannis says no. Kawhi stays in Los Angeles. And suddenly, the Warriors are left with Curry, a recovering Butler, Green, and a roster built around mid-level exceptions and draft picks. That's not a contender. That's a team spinning its wheels during the most valuable remaining years of Stephen Curry's career. This is why the Porzingis and Horford decisions are so much bigger than they look. They're not just player decisions. They're pivots. Depending on which way these go, the entire trajectory of this franchise shifts. Let's talk about something that people aren't paying enough attention to. The Quinton Post subplot. Because right here, buried underneath all the big-name drama, is a question that will tell you a lot about how the Warriors are thinking about their future. Quinton Post is 26 years old. He's a 7-footer who showed real promise earlier this season. At one point, the Warriors started him in 22 consecutive games. 22 straight. That's a statement from a coaching staff. That's a vote of confidence. But then the Porzingis trade happened, and Post's minutes evaporated almost immediately. And then he went down with a foot injury near the end of the year. Now he's a restricted free agent. The Warriors can match any offer he receives. And technically, they probably should keep him. He's young. He's big. He's cheap. In a world where the Warriors are paying Porzingis and Horford, Post is exactly the kind of cost-controlled backup center you need. But here's the tension. If both Porzingis and Horford come back, does Post even have a role? You've got two veteran big men ahead of him on the depth chart. His development gets stunted. And at 26, he needs to play. He needs real minutes. So the Post situation is actually a reflection of the entire philosophical dilemma facing Golden State. Do you go all in on the veteran championship window? Or do you start threading in younger pieces, even if it means a slightly lower ceiling right now? There's no clean answer. And that's exactly what makes this so fascinating to watch. Now let's talk about the financial reality one more time, because I want to make sure this lands. Curry at $62 million. Butler at $56 million. Those two contracts alone are $118 million. Against a cap of $165 million. Add Draymond at around $18 million. That's $136 million for 3 players. If Porzingis comes back at $20 million, and that's a realistic, team-friendly number, you're at $156 million. Still under the cap technically, but with 9 more roster spots to fill. Add Horford at $6 million if he picks up his option. Now you're at $162 million for 5 players. The Warriors have a first-round draft pick at number 11, which comes with a salary of around $6 million. Now you're at $168 million for 6 players. You see how fast this fills up. Every decision compounds the one before it. And the Warriors are operating without a lot of margin for error. The non-taxpayer mid-level exception is worth around $15 million. The taxpayer mid-level exception is worth around $6 million. Whether the Warriors can access the larger version depends entirely on whether they stay below the first apron threshold of around $209 million. And based on the numbers we just ran through, that is not guaranteed. This is why some people inside the league are actually suggesting the Warriors might be better served by not re-signing Porzingis. Not because they don't want him, but because letting him walk would shave $30 million off the books, potentially drop them out of luxury tax territory, and open up the flexibility to use the non-taxpayer MLE, which could help them retain DeAnthony Melton or sign a meaningful free agent. Melton, by the way, has been excellent this season. He's one of those guys who might not be a household name, but he makes a team better every time he steps on the floor. He has a player option too. And the Warriors desperately want him back. The financial chess here is absolutely relentless. Every piece you move affects 5 other pieces. Let me paint you a picture. It's July. Free agency opens. The Warriors have to make all of these decisions simultaneously or within hours of each other, because the market moves fast and money waits for no one. Porzingis is sitting in his agent's office fielding calls. Some team in the Eastern Conference is on the phone offering him $23 million a year for 3 years. And the Warriors, running their math in real time, are calculating whether they can afford to match or whether the cap implications push them somewhere they can't recover from. Meanwhile, Horford is at home with his family. His phone is buzzing. Mike Dunleavy is calling. Steve Kerr is probably texting. And Horford is having the quiet, honest conversations that 40-year-old men have with the people they love about what comes next and whether the game still makes sense. And in Milwaukee, the Giannis sweepstakes are happening. Multiple teams are calling. Multiple packages are being assembled. And the Warriors are trying to figure out whether the Porzingis sign-and-trade route is the right tool to use or whether they should just re-sign him and keep the frontcourt intact and hope for the best. All of this is happening at the same time. All of it is connected. All of it matters. Here's what I want you to sit with for a second. This isn't just about basketball strategy. This is about something deeper. Stephen Curry is 38 years old. He is still magnificent. He is still one of the most electrifying players in the history of the sport. But the window, the real contention window where Curry can carry a team to a title, is not infinite. It never was. Every year that passes is a year that doesn't come back. The Warriors won 4 championships in 8 years. 4. That is a dynasty. That is history. That is the kind of run that puts a franchise in the same conversation as the Showtime Lakers and the Michael Jordan Bulls and the Tim Duncan Spurs. But since their last title in 2022, they've been wandering. Searching. Trying to find the right combination of talent and health and timing to take one more serious run at the mountain. Porzingis was supposed to be part of that answer. Horford was supposed to add the size and leadership they needed. And for 15 regular season games, you could almost see the vision. You could almost see what this team could be if everyone stayed healthy, if the pieces clicked the right way, if the basketball gods were generous. But health didn't hold. And now the Warriors are left to decide whether they trust the vision enough to bet on it again. Whether Porzingis is worth the money and the risk. Whether Horford has one more year left in his body and his spirit. Whether this collection of players can be assembled for one more serious run while Curry is still at this level. That decision, right now, in these summer weeks, is the decision that writes the next chapter of Warriors history. And it could go any number of ways. What if they re-sign Porzingis and he stays healthy and plays 60 games and looks like the unicorn he always promised to be? What if that, combined with a rejuvenated Butler and a motivated Curry and an inspired Draymond, turns the Warriors back into a genuine Western Conference threat? What if Horford picks up his option and comes back and plays a hybrid mentor-veteran role that young players around him absorb and grow from? What if he's the reason this locker room holds together during the inevitable adversity of an 82-game season? What if Porzingis gets another respiratory setback? What if he misses the first 2 months of the season and then comes back and re-aggravates something and misses more time? What if the Warriors are paying $20 million for 40 games? What if Horford looks at everything, The injuries last year, the uncertainty about the roster, the reality of being 40 in a young man's game, and decides his body is telling him something he needs to listen to. What if both of them are gone and the Warriors enter next season with a front court that's completely undermanned, trying to go toe-to-toe with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves and whoever else is out there hunting for a title? Both of those futures are real. Both of them are possible. And right now, nobody, not Dunleavy, not Kerr, not Curry, not even Porzingis and Horford themselves, knows which one is coming. That uncertainty is the essence of the NBA offseason. And it is absolutely addictive. Let me bring you back to something Dunleavy said, because it keeps echoing in my head. He talked about how Porzingis and Horford add an element to our team that we haven't had in the past. Let that sink in. Golden State, a team that has dominated the league for a decade, is saying that these two players give them something they haven't had before. Size. Real, legitimate, front-court size. The Warriors have always been a perimeter team at heart. Curry, Klay Thompson before him, all those guards and wings. But they've consistently struggled against teams with dominant big men. The Paul Embiid Sixers. The Jokic Nuggets. The size and physicality of certain playoff matchups have exposed them in ways that shooting and spacing can't always solve. Porzingis and Horford together don't just solve the lineup problem. They change how opponents have to game plan against Golden State. You can't just drop your center into the paint and guard the three-point line anymore. You have to respect size on both ends. You have to think twice before switching everything. You have to actually honor the interior. That's a genuine, structural upgrade for this team. Not just two names, a different kind of Warriors basketball. And there's something specifically fascinating about Porzingis as a fit next to Curry. Porzingis can shoot threes. He shot over 31% this past season on a limited sample, and when he's been healthy historically, he's been a reliable three-point shooter for a center. The floor spacing implications of having a legitimate rim-protecting, shot-blocking, three-point shooting big next to the greatest shooter of all time are enormous. Defenders can't collapse on Curry if Porzingis is standing in the corner ready to drain it. That's a nightmare matchup for the opposing team's center. Do you help on Curry? Porzingis hits three. Do you stay on Porzingis? Curry drives, finishes, or kicks it out. It's exactly the kind of two-man game that made the Curry-Draymond partnership so devastating in the dynasty years. But now add Horford into this equation. Horford's value in this specific context isn't about individual brilliance, it's about completeness. He's the player who makes the right pass at the right time. He's the player who sets the perfect screen to free up Curry. He's the player who, when everything is going sideways in the fourth quarter of a playoff game, looks at the guys around him with calm eyes and says, "We're fine, we've been here before." That kind of value doesn't show up in a box score. But ask any championship team what a player like that means, and every single one of them will tell you, you can't win without it. Now, here's the thing I want you to think about as we approach the end of this. The Warriors aren't just making decisions about basketball. They're making decisions about Stephen Curry's legacy. Curry already has 4 rings. He's already the greatest shooter in the history of the sport. His place in the pantheon is secure. Nobody is going to reevaluate who Stephen Curry is based on whether he wins a 5th title. But we would be lying if we said it doesn't matter. Because it does. To him. To the franchise. To the fans who have watched every single one of those impossible shots, every shimmy, every deep three from 35 feet that shouldn't go in but always seems to anyway. One more ring. The thought of it. And this summer, this exact moment right now, is when the pieces either come together or they don't. The Warriors need to get this right. Curry deserves to have the right pieces around him. And the front office knows it. Which is why Dunleavy and Kerr are being so deliberate, so thoughtful, so intentional about every single move. They're not panicking. They're not rushing. They're thinking 3 moves ahead. And the first move on that chessboard, the very first piece that needs to be placed, is figuring out what happens with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford. So let's bring it all home. What do we actually think happens? On Horford, my gut says he comes back. The $6 million option is a modest ask. He genuinely loves San Francisco. His family loves it there. He's 1 year from the 20-year club, and that matters to a man of his character. The organization wants him back and has made that unmistakably clear. The exit meeting with Kerr apparently went well. He's going to take his time making this decision because he's deliberate about everything. But in the end, I think he picks up that option, and one of the most beloved veteran journeys in recent NBA history continues for at least one more season in the Bay. On Porzingis, it's genuinely a coin flip. And that's not me being dramatic. That's the honest reality of the situation. The desire is mutual. The fit is real. The basketball rationale is undeniable. But the financial constraints are severe, the injury history is terrifying, and the wild card of a potential Giannis or Kawhi trade could upend the entire plan overnight. If the Warriors can get Porzingis signed at $20 to $22 million per year, they probably do it. They probably pull the trigger fast and lock him up before someone else can make a run at him. That number keeps them functional on the cap, gives them tools to work with in free agency, and secures a piece that genuinely elevates this team. But if Porzingis wants 25 plus, if some team out there is willing to pay him at that level, the Warriors might have to make a very difficult choice. And the answer might not be the one Warriors fans want to hear. And hovering above all of it, the ghost of Giannis. The dream of Kawhi. The possibility, however slim, that this summer ends with a true superstar arriving in San Francisco to play alongside Curry for whatever time is left. That's the dream. That's the reason the Warriors are being patient. That's the reason they're holding their cards close. Because if they sign everyone too quickly, they lose the flexibility for the big swing. And if they wait too long, they lose the players they already know can help. The needle they're trying to thread is impossibly thin. But if anyone can do it, it's the franchise that figured out how to build one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history. The franchise that changed how basketball is played. The franchise built around the greatest shooter who ever lived. This is their moment of truth. This is where the next chapter gets written. And however this plays out, whether Porzingis is back wearing that blue and gold, whether Horford is in that locker room in October sharing wisdom with young players who'll carry his lessons long after he's gone, whether Curry is standing at half court in the playoffs one more time sending in a shot that has no business going in, you're going to be able to say you were paying attention when all of this unfolded. 2 men. 2 decisions. And the last great chapter of a dynasty hanging in the balance. Whatever happens, it's going to be something.